Hello and welcome back to my channel for this video, which is going to be the part 4 in my series, What Shall I Do With This Thing? This is the series where I take purposeless objects that I have laying around or that I find in charity shops and turn them into something that I actually want to display in my home. And in this episode we are going to be transforming this thing. This is I actually don't know what this is. I got this from a charity shop maybe a year ago and I paid £2 for it. And actually when I bought it, the volunteer who was working behind the till at the time said that she was the one that had donated this and that a friend had given it to her and the friend had said, I don't know what this is, do you want it? She said yes, then she realised she didn't have any use for it, so she gave it to the charity shop. And she did actually ask me if I knew what it was or if I knew what I was going to do with it. And I said no, I had no clue, but it's a nice kind of wooden slatty frame thing that I thought surely would come in handy for something. It's a good size, it's quite long because it has these slatted bars across. I was originally thinking I could make little fixtures for it and then hang things off of it. It would be good for something like that, but when I was thinking realistically, I didn't really have anything that I needed to hang off of it. I've already got my pegboard in this art room which has a good amount of hanging storage, and it's not like I have a huge collection of jewellery or scarves or any other smaller items that you might hang on something like this. So I don't really think it needs to function in that way. So it's just been hanging around waiting for inspiration to strike. And the other day I was in my bedroom looking at my windows and I had a thought. My bedroom has like a big bay window, so it's got one main panel in the middle and then two slimmer ones at the sides. The bigger panel has an IKEA blind in it, which is the same ones that I bought for most rooms in this flat. I was hoping to get the same blinds for the two side panels as well, but unfortunately IKEA didn't have ones that were the right width for those panels, so they've just been blindless this whole time, which hasn't been a huge problem because I am on the top floor of the building that I live in and also the building's on a hill, so it's not too overlooked from the front of the building into my bedroom, though I'm sure that there have been occasions where somebody could have peeked in and I would appreciate a little bit of extra privacy. So like I said, the other day I was sitting in my bedroom looking up at those windows and I had a thought. Could I use this thing at all to solve this issue? And I picked it up and put it into the window, and it is a pretty perfect fit for one of the sides of it. Obviously I have two of those windows and only one of these, so it's not going to solve my problem completely, but it'll be something and hopefully a fun project to do as well. I am conscious that obviously filming directly into a light window is going to mean that we get really dark shots, and I need to be careful not to show too much of the surrounding area outside because I don't want to dox myself. So maybe this video is not going to turn out that well, but I suppose we'll see. Yeah, this is incredibly backlit. What I'm thinking is that we can hang this from the sides of the window frame here so that it hangs over this panel, and I can do something similar to what I did in my toilet makeover. God, that's so dark. Let's flip you over. Where I did a kind of faux stained glass effect by painting directly onto one of my blinds, and I'm wondering if I can do the same thing with this if I stretch some fabric over the back of it and paint that fabric in different colours, let the sun shine through it and bring some nice colours into my bedroom. I have started doing some designs on Illustrator, but I haven't settled on any one of those yet, so I think I need a little bit more time to mull that over. But in the meantime, I'm thinking today I can still get going on this by giving all of the surfaces a good sand. I do already have some wooden accents in my bedroom. My bed is wood, as is my mirror and parts of my bedside shelving unit, but they're all more of a lighter ashy kind of bamboo toned wood than this. This is kind of like a tiki colour but with a very dodgy stain job on it. Whoever stained this was not removing the excess very well, so I'm thinking I want to sand this back and then restain it, or maybe just finish it with a bit of Danish oil or something so that it matches a little bit better with the other wooden accents that I've got going on in here. And that's a nice easy job that doesn't require too much thinking, which is perfect for me today because I don't really think I have much of a thinking cap on. So let's take this back into the art room, get my sandpaper out and get this all nicely rubbed down. A sensible person might put something down on this rug before I sand this directly on top of it, but I'm not a sensible person and I can't be bothered. So So we're just going to crack on straight away. I was considering, and am still considering, taking these spindles out because I don't really know what kind of purpose they'll serve. Some of the designs I was drawing, I was trying to integrate them into the design so it made sense, but most of the ones I drew looked better without them, so I may still take them out or take some of them out. So I don't know if I took all of them out whether it would become a little bit flimsy, because this seems to just be put together with wood glue. There's no screws or anything. I don't want to dismantle it completely or end up with something that's going to break easily. So for now I'll keep them on and sand them all, and then once I'm solid on a design I can decide whether or not some of them need to be removed. Let's go. Wait, I just remembered that I bought a hand sander. I got so used to not having one that I went straight to the sandpaper. No point messing around with that when I got a power tool. Be right back. Haha, that's more like it. Get down there, plug you in. This will be much more efficient. Yeah, that sands back to a lovely light wood. I think some Danish oil on that will do nicely. The unicycle's getting in the way. Ugh, standard DIY problems. Okay, that's one side sanded, and I already think it looks better this lighter colour, so I'm happy with that. And also, while I was sanding, I was thinking about these spindles, because these being here does make the sanding process a little bit more tricky. So I figured if I do want to remove some or all of them, it actually makes sense to do it now rather than wait till later. And I think I've settled on getting rid of the majority of them and just leaving a few. One thing I could do is keep every fourth one. So those three would go, keep this one, those three would go, keep this one, those three would go, keep this one. But I think with most things, they look better to me when they're a little bit asymmetrical and imbalanced. And I like the idea of the gaps being kind of irregular sizes. So I'm thinking I'll get rid of 4, keep 1, get rid of 2, keep 1, get rid of 3, keep 1. Would that be good? How I'm getting them out, I don't know. They're gonna have to be snapped, I'm afraid. Better if I can snap them and keep the ends of them in the hole ideally, because then I can just sand that back and I won't have to fill it too much. But I think they're just gonna come out the way that they come out, and I'll figure it out later. That was a good one. Getting the hang of it. I find I always make things better when I just make snap decisions. Sitting down in front of illustrators all well and good, but hitting myself in the face. Doing something with my hands and looking at it as I do it is always going to be preferable. Did I cut my lip? No. And I got a whole load of sticks to play around with for future projects. What shall I do with these things? Don't know yet. Put them to one side for later. Yeah, I like the slightly uneven sizes, and it will mean that I've got kind of 4 little windows to play around with, which maybe I could do something different in each. Block colours might be nice, or different images in each panel. Don't know yet, but that inspires me a lot more than how it looked before. So now I'll just carry on sanding all of these inside. Got the back to do, and then I'll do the spindles as well. It's going to be a lot easier now, which is fab. Okay, we're done, and that took way longer than I imagined, as is always the case. As you can see, I did lose another one of the spindles in the sanding process. It snapped off, so now we've just got 3 sections, but I don't mind that at all. Like I said, I don't have a set design for this yet. It is looking much better without all of that janky stain on it, and I'm pretty sure that I do have Danish oil in my stocks that I can use for this, which will just give it a little bit more warmth and obviously seal in the wood so it will last longer. Next thing I need to do is obviously fill up all of these holes that I've created, and I'm going to do that by cutting down some little bits of the dowel, shoving them in with some wood glue, letting that dry, and then I'll sand them all back. I think these dowels must have only been glued down on one side, because on one side they all stayed and on the other side they all went. Shoddy craftsmanship to whoever put whatever this is together. I also want to put a bit of wood glue in the joins of the 2 spindles I've got left, because they're wibbling about a bit and I think it's making the frame bow out, which I don't want. I want it to stay straight. So that's next on the list, but first I think I'll stop for a break and eat a bagel. So I'll see you in about 30 minutes time, refueled and ready to go. I have returned and I've got my saw, my wood glue, and now we're ready to fill these holes. So I'll just start by chopping down one of these dowels into little plugs for all of these. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 13 of them. Lucky number 13. I imagine I can probably get that many out of one of these. Easy. Very exciting. I have an electric saw now, which my mum gave me, but it's not needed for this because this is tiny and easy to chop. Hello? I hadn't seen her if she was. Done. Now I'm just going to put a dollop of glue into each of these holes and shove these in there. Easy enough. Okay, done. All of my holes have now been plugged and I just need to wait for that glue to dry overnight so that I can sand that back, get it all lovely and smooth. Also, I should say that this hole was a little bit tighter than the other ones and I couldn't get any of the dowels into it, so I used the end of a paintbrush instead. It's all wood at the end of the day. I don't see why it would make a difference. So last thing I can do today, because I can't stain it obviously until that's done, is pop a bit of glue into these holes of our 2 remaining dowels and weight it down with something so that it holds it together. I don't have any kind of big clamps or anything that will work for this. I'm sure I can figure out a makeshift solution with a couple of heavy things and some careful propping. I actually decided to strap it down with the belt from my coat, which seems to work. Now I will leave all of this gluing to dry for at least 24 hours before I can come back and sand and cover it in some oil. So I will see you at a future date. Okay, it's the next day and our wood glue should be fully dry. These are all feeling pretty secure, so I can debelt this now. This isn't popping out or bowing anymore, and our little nodules are ready to get sanded down. So I'm going to do that quickly now to get this side nice and flush like this other side. Look at that lovely finish. Even the weird paintbrush one turned out alright. And now it's nice and smooth and ready for oiling. I went through my stocks and I was correct that I have this very old and slightly manky bottle of Danish oil, which despite its appearance I'm assuming is still good to use. I guess we'll find out. And I'm going to put that on there with this here lint-free cloth. I know from doing this on my kitchen units that you only need a little bit of oil and you've got to spread it out really well and then wipe off excess a few minutes later with another bit of non-oily cloth. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm just going to go over this whole thing until it's all lovely and lubricated. It doesn't change the colour massively once it's dry, but it does make it a little bit more warm toned, and it'll also just mean that this wood is sealed and protected, which is what we want. So I'm just going to spend the next 20 minutes or so oiling this whole thing, and then I'm going to leave it to dry for another day. Then I'm going to go away and spend a bit of time on Illustrator just solidifying my plans for the actual fabric panel on this, and then I will catch back up with you in a couple of days time when this is dry and I've got a solid idea in mind so that I can tell you what it is that we're going to do, and then I can do it. So I'll catch you then. It is a few days later and the Danish oil on this is now completely dry. I was considering going back in with another coat, but I think it's already looking a little bit goldeny and I don't want it to be any more yellow than it already is. So we're settling with this colour and I'm happy with it. I think it's definitely an improvement on the patchy stain that was on this before. And now we're ready for the next steps. I have spent quite a lot of time on Illustrator doing different options for what I want to put on this. I started out with just random blocks of abstract colour. Then I was doing more picture-based things, florals, landscape type designs. I actually really liked this option, which has a long pair of legs on it, because I do like legs and I would like to do something leg-based at some point. But I felt like I wasn't really leaning in to the object enough and making use of these separators to make those make sense. So the design I've settled for is this one, which has a lovely cloudy sky at the top, which I think will be nice taking into consideration that this is going to be in a window. We got an eye in the middle, which is kind of a replacement for the legs. Nice to have some sort of body part on there, and then a lovely yellow sunny panel at the bottom. And all of these designs are very simple, very minimal, so I think it will be pretty easy to do, to be honest with you. The next question is, what is it that I am painting onto. And I have this tablecloth. It's made of a nice loose weave linen. It has a few holes in it here and there, but we can work around that. And all I'm thinking I'm going to do is cut out 3 separate panels of this, paint onto them, and then staple the fabric nice and tight around the back of the frame. And I don't see why that won't work. And I'm just going to stop myself here because, as it turns out, it didn't work. And try as I might, everything I did this day just didn't look good. And actually, by the end of the day, I realised that I was going to have to scrap this whole painted fabric plan. I did consider completely editing this day out of this video and pretending it never happened, but in the spirit of honesty and transparency, I decided that it was worth keeping in, just to show the truth behind my creative process and admit to the fact that some/many of my ideas end up being ill-conceived, poorly executed, or just generally shit. And that's okay, and is of course totally normal when it comes to making. The plan I had here was obviously to paint this design onto my fabric as I had done with my toilet blind. I started out with the cloud panel, which came out okay, I thought initially, if a little bit juvenile. I had thought that using a looser weave fabric and watered down paint would give me the stained glass effect that I was looking for, with different colours shining through the fabric when it was held up to the sun. However, I realised as I was painting that the watery paint and the loose weave were causing a lot of bleed, which kind of ruined the simple, clean design that I was aiming for. And once it had dried a bit and I held it up to the light, I saw that I wasn't really getting any colour shining through. And I also noticed that the brush strokes were really visible and looked quite messy. I hadn't found this to be an issue on my window blind because on that one I was deliberately going for a painterly, brush strokey look, and it was just an abstract design, so colours bleeding into each other didn't really matter and actually added to the effect. On this, on the other hand, it just didn't work. Still, I thought the idea may be salvageable and I had no better plan immediately up my sleeve, so I moved on to the eye as planned, which I fucked up pretty quickly by using this shade of pink for the background, which was somehow both too bright and too dark. Because by this point I knew bleed was going to happen regardless, I tried leaning into this on the eye and going for more of a deliberately bleedy, messy, childlike look, but it ended up just looking bleedy, messy and childlike, but not in a good way. And then by the time I got to the sun, I'd already basically realised that I didn't like what I was doing, so to be honest, I didn't try very hard to make it look good, and surprise, surprise, it didn't. So at the end of this frustrating day, it was back to the drawing board for this project, and I took a few days off to reset, regroup and calm my anger so that I could return with fresh eyes and a new plan. It's a few days later and we've got some catching up to do. I was feeling quite low after my fabric plan failed and I actually nearly ditched this project altogether in a fit of fury, but classic sunk cost fallacy, I didn't want to let all of that sanding go to waste, so we are pushing ahead. I really want this thing to function as stained glass and have it shine some nice colours through into my bedroom. So I realised that what I really needed was a transparent material to work onto instead of an opaque fabric. The obvious option for a stained glass inspired project is obviously to make a stained glass panel, which is something I would really love to try in the future. However, the frame I'm doing this onto is really pretty big and that is very ambitious for a first stained glass project. And also I don't have the materials, tools or skills required to be cutting and putting together little bits of glass. So that option is a no-go. I did think I could get one piece of glass cut to size maybe, and then I could use glass paint to paint straight onto that and create a stained glass effect that way. Or I even considered doing the same thing onto a clear panel of perspex or acrylic, which would obviously be lighter weight than glass and less easily smashable, which is preferable for my clumsy self. And I almost ordered a panel of this online, which for the size that I needed, with some pre-drilled screw holes in each corner, was going to cost me about £30. And then I would have to buy multiple colours of the glass paint on top of that because that's not something I already have, and those are also quite pricey because they're like a specialist paint. So this option, while feasible, was looking to be a little bit expensive, which I wouldn't have minded necessarily if I had been confident that I could do it and make it look good, but honestly I just wasn't certain that I would be able to, and for something like that it's kind of a one try and you're out. So I put that idea on pause and decided instead to take a trip down to my local hardware shop just to take a look around and see if inspiration might strike, or if a cheaper solution to my issue may present itself. And fortunately for me, it did, or at least I hope it did. In the garden section, I found some big rolls of various netting, fabric and plastic that people use for garden projects, I guess. And this particular plastic jumped out to me. This is quite a heavyweight clear plastic sheeting with a kind of raised grid design on it, which is a little bit, I think, reminiscent of stained glass if you close your eyes and imagine hard enough. And this was £7 per metre, and it came on a really wide roll, so I got 1 metre of it, which was going to give me more than enough to cover the back of my frame, with plenty also left over for doing some essential testing before committing to the real thing. Instead of buying paint to use on this, I also had another brainwave. What if I used Sharpies instead? Because they're permanent markers and I know that they work on most materials, including plastic. I already did have some Sharpies at home, but I wanted a wide range of colours to use on this, and I ended up finding 2 packs which offered a really wide range of shades in the back to school sales for a combined cost of £22.99. I was less resentful about this cost than I would have been about buying glass paint, because to be honest, I don't know how much use I'm going to get out of glass paint in the future. However, I do know that I use Sharpies all the time and I will definitely make use of them in many a future project. So these are my new materials for this project. Next thing was to figure out a new design, and I was actually really happy to now have this grid pattern to work with, because it gave me more of a confined framework to work within to figure out different things I could do. It obviously limited my ability to do lots of curved shapes, which is very much what I'd leaned towards in my previous design. So I went back to Illustrator and just played around filling in all of these little squares with different colours to see what it is I could do. Options I liked included these kind of rainbow squares in each of the 3 panels, and also this like pixelated cloud design running across all 3. But it wasn't until I layered 4 of these options together that I was really happy with how it looked. So this is what we're going for. And now the only question that remains is, can I make this drawing into a reality? And that is what we will be finding out today. I did a bit of preparatory work yesterday, which did end up being a little bit convoluted. So let me explain. I started off by lining up all of my Sharpies so that I could see how many unique colours that I had, and it turned out I had 34. I numbered each shade so that I could remember what was what, and then clipped them onto a long piece of cardboard so that they wouldn't all get mixed up. Then on a piece of my extra plastic, I made a key and tested out each colour to see how it shows up on the plastic, and I did both 1 and 2 layers of each to refer to on this key. Then I went back to my Illustrator document and tried my best to find a good match between each colour from my key and each colour on my design, marking the numbers on top of the illustration so that I would know what goes where. The numbers marked with a star next to them mean that they need 2 coats of that colour. So this is basically just a big colour by numbers at this point, and in theory from now on this should be a simple case of following the plan and just colouring in, which I think will be fun. I am thinking that probably some of the colours will end up needing an extra coat, or even an extra coat of a different colour on top of them to get a good shade match. But I'm going to just start out by following this plan exactly as it is, and then once I've done the first round I can step back, see how it looks and go from there. And now all of that's been said, I've got a dry mouth and we can finally get going. I'm putting a white sheet down first so that I can actually see what I'm doing, and I've already pre-cut a strip of our plastic. Okay, so I've got my plan next to me here, and I'm going to start in the top left corner with the first colour, which is number 28, which is this shade of pink, and I've counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 rows up from the corner, so that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Start here and fill them in. 9. Okay, so that's my first row. Now I need to count how many squares across. So it's 1, 2, 3, 14 along, so 13 more this way. On this plastic, one side, the blue little ridges are actually a bit more raised than on the other side. So I'm using this first side as the side I colour onto because it's easier to fill it in, having those ridges, stopping my pen from going over the lines too much. I can already tell this is going to be a lot of stopping and counting, but I don't mind that. It's quite satisfying. 8, 12, 13, 14. Trying to do the pen marks as neatly as possible and only go in one direction so that they're not too visible as different strokes. So that's our first corner done. And now I need to switch to my number 27 pen. I'm gonna make sure that I'm clipping these back on as I go so that I don't lose track of my beautiful numbering system. So 27 is gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across. And then 1, 2, 3, 6 down. I can see I've marked with an asterisk, which means that it needs 2 coats of this colour. However, I want to let the first coat totally dry before I do a second coat on. So what I'm going to do is do all of it, ignoring the asterisks for the first round. Once that's all dry, I can go back in and do the second coats on my asterisked sections, if that makes sense. So now I can move on to my number 20, this little red guy, and I'm going to just carry on colouring in this whole thing with my pens. I don't think it looks terrible, but I also don't necessarily think it looks good. Okay, so I just realised that I made a little bit of a mistake with my counting and I messed up with these 3 squares. I've done them the wrong colour, which isn't the end of the world. I could probably just get away with having them be the wrong colour, but because I do want to see if I can stick to this plan, I'm going to try a little hack, which I've just made up, which is to see if I can get the colour that I've put on off with a little bit of nail polish remover and a cotton pad. I feel like there's a good chance this will work, and it's good to try it out, I think. So let me just... Easy. Okay, no harm done. That's good to know that any future mistakes can be rectified with a little bit of that. This is how it's looking so far, and I do think it looks quite nice. Whether it's going to turn out exactly like my plan, I am not sure, but we're going to end up with a colourful, nice pattern regardless. So I think I'm happy, feeling somewhat relatively confident maybe that it's going to end up looking good. And I'm going to carry on. I think what I'll do is fill in the whole rest of the top panel of this before I show you next, because otherwise it's just going to be lots and lots of clips of me colouring and not much else. So I will catch you in a minute when this bit is all filled in. Okay, first panel, first go over is done, and this is what it's looking like if we can see. I think it looks quite nice. Some of the colours went on better than others, like this dark purple seemed to go on a bit scratchy, so now it's looking a little bit linier than I would have wanted. You can see this little square here. I just tested how it would look with another coat. So I think what I'm going to do is just start going over some of this panel with those same colours so I can see how the depth of colour is going to look, and if I can remove some of these little scratchy marks a little bit. Then I'll have to set it to one side and come back to it tomorrow or another day. But overall I'm pretty happy, and it's a large improvement on my shitty fabric attempt. So I think we finally cracked it in terms of what it is we're doing, even if it's going to take a little bit longer than originally planned. So I'm going to sign out for the day and come back at a future date to get the last 2 panels done and finish this all off. What do we think? Is it shit? Is it good? Don't know. See you soon. So a few days later I returned and I carried on following my plan and colouring in the plastic sheet with my Sharpies. Even though I'd started out trying to be quite careful and considered with my colouring, admittedly as time went on I got a little bit sloppier, which helped me to get through it all a bit quicker. I think on this day I probably spent about 6 hours colouring, because I also managed to binge watch the whole series of Loch Ness on Netflix as I went. I really enjoyed doing this and I was feeling pretty grateful grateful for all the preparation I'd done in the days before, because it meant that I didn't have to think too much about what I was doing and I could just switch my brain off and enjoy the feeling of pen on plastic. I went over everything with the first coat initially, stopping every so often to stare at it and question my life decisions, and once that was all filled in, I went back in with second coats of the pens over my asterisked sections and also mixed in some different colours in areas to try and match the colours to my plan as best as I could, until eventually it was done and I could set my pens down, take a step back and have a look at it. To be honest, at this point I was feeling slightly loopy and a little bit unconvinced with what I'd made, so I let those niggling feelings of doubt fester overnight and I came back the next day to finish this project. We have come to the end of this project and I only have a very few amount of things left to do today. First of which is to chop off my excess plastic around this stained glass panel, which I will do, surprise surprise, with a pair of scissors. I am going to be keeping these cut off bits, by the way, because plastic will not biodegrade and I will find other uses for it, I promise. It may spend a year or so in the craft room before I find a reason to use it, but there'll be something I can do with this. Also, I'm really greasy today and I'm just going to ask you to ignore that. Thank you. I actually did add an extra row around the whole outside of this for a reason which I will explain once we come to attaching it to the frame. It is a slightly annoying reason, admittedly, but not one that I'm going to dwell on. Okay, done. Here we have it. Our finished panel. It actually looks a lot better now that we don't have that extra plastic around the outside. Still looks like plastic, but a little bit less so now. And now I just need to staple it onto the back of my frame. That annoying reason that I mentioned why I added an extra bit around the outside is that the squares on this panel are ever so slightly wonky. So it's not going to perfectly line up straight with the frame, which I did suspect would be the case from the beginning, and it has ended up that way. So you can see if I line it up perfectly in this top corner, by the time we get to the bottom it chops off all of the final pink row, and I want at least a little bit of pink in all of the corners. So I'm just going to do my best to lay it down where it doesn't look too obviously wonky, but it is always going to be at least slightly wonky, and we're going to learn to live with that. And I will be attaching it onto the back of this frame with this staple gun. So if I get my middle point where I want it, I'll start there first. It's just a little bit of trial and error to get the placement, how it's going to look best. Would I rather it be straight at the top, straight at the bottom, or straight in the middle? Because I kind of need to choose between those three options. Maybe straight at this point is best. I think that's going to have to do. Let's commit with the first staple. Pulling it tight as I go. That's very securely on there, and it looks something like this. Now I'm just going to go around and trim off any of the excess that shows from the front, because it is slightly wonky, as I mentioned, so some of the bits need a little bit of extra trimming. The good thing about using plastic for something like this is at least you don't have to worry about whether it's going to fray, because it definitely will not. A few more staples for good measure. And that is done. Nice and taut like a drum. Here she is, the finished stained glass panel, and I don't fully know how I feel about it. I think I like it. It's nice and colourful if nothing else, and held up to the light it does look rather pretty. So can I complain? Yes I can, but will I? No I won't. The wonkiness is slightly annoying. It's pretty obvious here at the top and at the bottom, but I don't think it matters hugely. And it does look a lot like the plan that I made, and that's always satisfying when something looks like what you wanted it to. I'm happy enough, and now it is time to get it hung. As you can see, I've added a couple of these little screw-in hook things from which I was hoping to be able to hang it directly with a couple of screws in my window frame. However, since measuring it, I have realised that these are going to be slightly too short to reach each side of the frame. So I'm going to be adding a little bit of extra wire to each of them that I can hang onto some screws. So all we need to do now is put some screws into the window frame, add the wire, get it hung, and Bob's your uncle, this project's over. Thank the Lord. It looks cute. I am happy with that. And it's hanging just loose like this, so I can still access my window, or I can easily just unhook it from these screws here if I want to take it down to get it out of the way temporarily if I was going to clean my windows, which happens rarely. But that's it. Annoyingly, it's a very overcast day today, so we don't have much sun shining through to be able to see how well the light's gonna look. But I'll try and get a few extra clips at golden hour tonight so that you can see a little bit better how it's looking. I'm happy. And it is still impossible to film because if I have enough light on my face, this will be bleached out, and if this looks good, I will be dark as hell. But that's the end of this project. And I'm really glad that it's done. I'm happy with it. I think it looks pretty. It adds a little bit of extra colour to my bedroom, which I appreciate. I'm going to turn you this way so you can actually see me. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a little bit of a shit show. In the grand scale of all the projects I've done, this one isn't up there with my favourites. However, it's also not nearly the worst thing I've ever made. So that's a win in of itself. And at least I've managed to find a use for that slatted frame that up until now has had no purpose at all. If you enjoyed this video and if you enjoy general crafty chaos, please do consider subscribing. Leave me a comment if you've got anything you want to say. If you want to slag me off, go for it, and I will see you again in the future for more makeovers, projects, and miscellaneous things. Bye bye!